So, hey there. Have you ever thought to yourself, man, I have an orange tree or I have a lemon tree? Would surely like to have multiple, two, maybe three. More is always better, right? Especially in the gardening world. Well, if you've ever thought about that, then this is the video for you. Because in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you from beginning to end how to propagate your citrus tree from cuttings. And now, if by chance you're new here, hey, how's it going? Appreciate you coming hang out with me. The name is Gray. I'm a Texas master gardener growing out of zone 8B, just south of Dallas, Texas. But I'd like for you to consider me just like your friendly neighborhood gardener, here to help you grow. But let's get into the swing of things. Now, I recently just filmed a video in my greenhouse showing tangerine cutting that I had just got from a friend. And when someone was watching this video, they actually sent me an email because I am totally available via email. And that's at urbangardeningwithgray@gmail.com. Sorry, I paused there. Forgot my email just that quick. But I digress. But they were asking me specifically about the cuttings. And of course, in that video, I highlighted a lot of the cuttings that I have. For instance, this is a page Mandarin cutting. And what else do we have? Oh, here we go. This is blood orange cutting. And in the email, the subscriber was asking if she was like, essentially, Gray, you've talked about these cuttings, but can you show us your techniques on how you make propagations from cuttings? I was like, you know what? That's a great idea because I don't think that's a video I've actually ever covered. And so that's what we're going to do today. And now, before we get into talking about making propagations via cutting, I want to take a moment and explain a little bit about propagation and what that actually means. Now, if you're a more advanced grower and you totally get the concept, go ahead and skip to the next chapter. So, I don't have to reiterate the same thing that you're already aware. So for my new folks, trees and plants always are looking for a means of being able to replicate themselves, just like us, just like the animal species, right? Animals, humans, we all are always trying to propagate ourselves. We're always trying to make more an offspring of ourselves. Now, there's multiple ways of being able to do this. The traditional way is the seed way, right? You create a seed, and then that seed becomes the offspring of the said plant, just like with a human being and so forth, right? The only challenge when you're growing fruit trees from seed, it's two different variables. One, is the offspring, is the seed going to be true to seed? I mean, think about it like this. It's like a husband and a wife, right? Or a male and a female, horse for that matter. You're going to get genetic DNA from both parents when those two parents come together and make their offspring. So depending on how this tree is pollinated, and I'm just using this for a visual example, but depending on how the tree is pollinated or the fruit is pollinated, that offspring could be something completely different. And now the thing about it is I've actually covered this subject before on a previous video that I filmed talking about essentially how growing from seed might not be the best option when you're trying to, of course, grow fruit. Reason being is because the second variable you have is that let's say hypothetically that your seed is going to grow true to form, right? So the lemon seed that I take from this lemon fruit and place into the soil and grow another lemon tree, it's going to be the exact same fruit. So we got that, right? Well, depending on the fruit, now there's ranges, there's different time lengths, so to speak, but depending on the fruit, for a mature tree, you're probably looking at a very long time frame, depending on the fruit. So say, for instance, let's say hypothetically an avocado, right? We all love avocado. We've all experimented around with the avocado seed and trying to germinate and create a new tree, right? The only thing about is that with avocado, we're going to specifically talk about like a Hass avocado, one of the most common avocados. It could take anywhere between 5 to maybe 15 years before that tree would even ever fruit. Now, I don't know about you, but in the garden, I like a little bit of instant gratification. That's a lot of deferring that you'd have to do. So that's why the better course of action is going to be starting with an already fully grafted tree. Now, truth be told, whenever you go to any commercial nursery, big box store, what have you, that's actually what you're buying. Most people don't even realize that the tree that you get from like a Costco, or for instance, this orange right here, this came from Costco last season. thinking about going out to Costco again because they got a Satsuma that I really got my eye on. Nonetheless, most of your trees or that you're going to buy commercially are going to be started from a graft. And essentially all that is taking an already mature branch and then fusing it almost surgically onto a rootstock. And now I'm pointing right here. This is the actual graft point for this page Mandarin. Now, unfortunately, I don't know 100% what this rootstock is. I mean, I could look at the label or, check with the grower. But on the top, everything on the top of this is 100% page Mandarin orange. And now the reason why growers do this is one, to guarantee that you get the same exact type of fruit that you want every single time, because it's a supply and demand thing. For instance, I'm looking for a Satsuma. Yeah, a tangerine is cool. Yeah, a navel orange is cool. But what I want specifically is a Satsuma because I know a Satsuma is going to be able to handle my winters out here in Dallas. So if I wanted that specific tree, a grower would guarantee that tree by grafting it on to a rootstock. Second reason why they do it is because grafting on to differing types of rootstock allows them to essentially combat things like bad soil conditions or root rot. Something that maybe that plant like the Satsuma, for instance. I'm using this as an example because I actually did not look this up. But let's say hypothetically, the Satsuma is prone to root rot from overwatering and poor drainage. Well, I could graft it onto a rootstock that would actually combat that or be a little bit predisposed to combat that, and that would eliminate that from the equation. You get it? And then everything from the graft point is going to be that tree that I actually do desire. And now the method that I'm going to be sharing with you today is actually a third method, and that is making a propagation via cutting. That means taking a mature branch, cutting it off at a leaf node, removing some of the skin, some of the bark, and placing that down in soil and getting it to root. Now, out of all three methods that I've went over today, grafting is by far the superior means of propagation. I won't be grafting today, and there's a reason behind that, because the propagations that I'm using, that I'm growing, are going to be strictly container plants. So these are going to be kept in my greenhouse during the winter months, or even indoors during the winter months. So they're not going to be exposed to the harsh elements. They're not going to be planted directly in my soil. If you're from Dallas, you know what kind of soil conditions I got out here. I got a lot of heavy clay, a lot of heavy slate and stone in my soil. It's not the best. So they won't be exposed to those elements where I would need to have a guaranteed rootstock that can handle those conditions. And so since that's the means I'm growing them, I'm going to do them this more simplified means of just growing them via cuttings. But if you're wondering, hey, Gray, can you show us how to graft? Don't worry. I am going to be grafting this spring onto this trifoliate orange. And before you ask, why are there no leaves on this trifoliate orange tree? It's still dormant. Believe it or not, despite the fact that I'm in shorts and a short sleeve t-shirt and hat, it is actually still winter. But we have in fall spring right now out here in Texas. But next week we'll be down in the 40s and 50s all over again. So that's the reason why this tree is actually still dormant. But this is a trifoliate orange. It's an orange tree, and it produces a bitter orange that's really not palatable. So this orange tree is eventually going to become my Franken orange. I'm thinking about grafting blood orange on there, maybe tangerine, maybe some page Mandarin or Satsuma. So I'm going to have like 4 different orange trees growing all on this one trifoliate orange rootstock. And now, before I get back to our propagations via cutting, I want to take a moment to highlight this tree here. This is actually a Calamondin tree. And interesting thing, I actually had recorded a previous video about the trifoliate orange and it not actually being a Calamondin. And I'll make a point to put a video up here so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. And I had a wonderful subscriber, now new friend, reached out to me, said, Gray, you're looking for a Calamondin tree? Dude, I have one. You want to swap trees? So yeah, we totally did that. I swapped him a Pakistani mulberry, and he swapped me this beautiful 3 to 4 year old Calamondin tree. So now I finally have a Calamondin. So appreciate you, Chris. Good looking out, brother. But anyway, back to our cuttings. Now, when it comes to making your propagations via cuttings, first thing you're going to need is you're going to need a mature branch to start with. So for the sake of this video and this demonstration, I'm going to be using my Meyers Lemon tree here. I've already made propagations off of it, so I already have one, but I'm still going to be using this for an example because what you're looking for in your mature branch is going to be a branch that's going to be about 6 to 8 inches long. So if we do about that, that's about what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and make that cut. But first, I want to tell you about the materials you should have on hand before you start your cutting. Now, essentially, that's just going to be a set of sharp pruners. Make sure they're nice and sharp so you can make a nice clean cut, as well as a decent grafting knife with a nice strong edge on it as well. And now the third and most important tool that I do think you need whenever you're making a cutting via propagation is going to be some retain spray. Now, retain spray is actually a sponsor of the Urban Gardening with Gray YouTube channel, as well as the Dirt on Gardening podcast. But I really do love this stuff because this not only lubes your tools, it also sanitizes as well. And it's completely 100% organic, made from oregano oil. It smells great. So, truth be told, whenever you're making any kind of pruning or grafting or propagation, a lot of the times what happens to your trees and or plants when you're making those wounds on the trees, they can get infected by disease from other plants that you might not be aware of. So by making sure you go through, lube up your tools and sanitize them is a great way to stop the disease spread. And now our fourth and final tool is kind of optional. I prefer using it, but you make your own decisions. I like to use rooting hormone right on the exposed cutting. That way it gives it more of a boost of being able to root properly. You don't have to do this, but in my experience, by using the rooting hormone, you get a higher success rate. And now when you're making your cutting, remember, we want to go about 5 or 6 inches down, and we want to go right below a leaf node. So what I like to do is go about an inch down below that leaf node. I'm going to take my pruners, and I'm going to make a diagonal cut. And now the reason why I'm making a diagonal cut is because on the parent plant, this diagonal cut it'll be easier for it to heal by having a diagonal cut as opposed to a straight cut. And now we have our cutting. And now that we have our new cutting, we can call this our Scion. And what we're going to do next is we're going to actually prep this to go in the soil. And we're going to do that by removing majority of the leaves. I like to take the leaves down to about no more than about 2 or 3. Reason being is because what we're doing by doing this is we're redirecting energy. Because I know you're thinking like, well, doesn't the tree, the new seedling need those leaves for photosynthesis? Not necessarily. We're going to only leave about 3 up here. That's more than enough to be able to properly photosynthesize. But we want to redirect that energy into our root production. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my grafting knife and I'm going to go down to where I made the cutting in between the leaf node, and that's that tissue mass right there, in between the leaf node and to the end of the cutting. And I'm going to take my grafting knife and I'm just going to peel back this skin. And what we're doing by peeling back this skin, we're exposing the cambium layer. The cambium layer in the tissue of the tree is its cellular layer. This is where it sends up all of its nutrients. This is where it's going to be sending, all of its water and so forth from the root system up to the tree. And we just want to expose this layer, and we're going to be adding our rooting hormone to this layer. Now, we're not completely shaving this down all the way down. We just want to expose that cambium layer right there. And now I'm going to take my cutting and I'm going to dip it into my rooting hormone here, so I get a nice liberal amount of rooting hormone right there on this Scion. Knock off the excess, and then boom. Let's see. That's what we got right there, and that's good enough. And now I'm going to take this freshly cut and prepped Scion, and I'm going to place it down into a nice loose-fitting soil. Loose draining soil. It's a nice loose fluffy mix because you don't want anything. Citrus doesn't like to have wet feet. And I'm going to go all the way down to about inch down into the soil to make my hole. See, citrus doesn't really like to have wet feet. They really prefer to have their root system, get the water they need and that water pass on by. So you want something that's going to be well draining while this plant is establishing itself. And now that we've made our hole, we're going to place it down in there, because we don't want to knock off that rooting hormone I put in there. And then we're just going to make a nice little, add some pressure to it. And there we go. C'est bon. We're good to go. And now we're going to take this new propagation and we're going to put it in bright, indirect sunlight. And for me, that's going to be inside, because putting it out in the direct light right now while it's still trying to formulate roots and everything could be a little bit too much stress on the plant. And despite my attire, it actually is still winter. So I don't want to play around with weather and all of its different variables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this in at, like I said, bright, indirect light inside until we get root formation. And now, as far as our root formation, we're looking at anywhere between about 3 to 4 weeks, give or take, so about a month before we actually get our full root development. And now, as far as our root development, what we're looking for to know that we definitely have roots forming is we're going to be looking for new growth. If you start to get an established of new growth, yeah, you definitely have some rooting going on there. The plant is thriving. But let's take this out of the pot because I want to show you guys what you are looking at when you make your propagations via cutting. Let's just break that up a little bit. There we go. Oh, I'm losing my soil. Let's look at this root ball. Let's see. Look at that. This is why we do it. Look at that. That is a nice, healthy root system here. Look at that. See, coming from our leaf node, that's where our roots came in from. Boom. We don't have any damaged roots here. Let's give it a smell because I always like to smell my roots. Yeah, that's a healthy root system there. The reason why I smell my roots is because I like to make sure that we don't have any root rot situation going on here. But yeah, this is what your roots are going to look like after you've made your cutting and you've allowed it to root. And there you have it, my growers and friends. That's how easy it is to make propagations of your fruit trees via cutting. And you did hear me correctly when I said fruit trees. I know today I just focused on citrus and, I showed you my Meyers and my blood orange and so forth. But this does work for a multitude of different fruit trees as well. So if we're talking about like stone fruit, like peaches and plums and pears, or, avocado, mango, so forth, this can work for those means as well. But I'm going to still have a caveat there. Grafting is far superior. So any of you guys thinking about coming after me in the comments like, no, grafting is better, I agree. Grafting is far superior means of being able to propagate your trees. Well, maybe you might not have a parent tree to graft onto. Maybe you might be have some financial constraints and you have a friend that has a fruit tree and you want one too. Or hypothetically, what if we're living in an apartment, right? And we're growing out of containers. This is still a viable way of being able to still have your fruit trees as well. So I hope this information helps. And I hope you had fun hanging out with me because, of course, I had fun hanging out with you. And as always, if you have questions, of course, drop them in the comments. Give me about 24, 48 hours, give or take, and I'll get right back to you. But it's been amazing speaking with you as always. Talk to you again real soon.